Let's go ahead and continue our coverage of the earnings call that I started this morning. I think you're going to like this one a lot. We're going to be looking at 10 additional reasons why the call was just absolutely amazing. But I am going to do a few things to bring you up to date, a few other interesting updates with both regard to the earnings call and with regard to the economic things that have come out this morning that I think we should talk about. All right, so let's continue. Let's start with Sawyer Merritt. He says, to provide some context, here's how Tesla stock has performed on the day following each of the past four earnings dates, including today. Well, today it's not decided yet, and we're down more than 10% at this point, but quarter three was down 9.3%, quarter two was down 9.74%, quarter one was down 9.75%. In fact, the inclination for Tesla's stock to be down after the earnings call is so strong that people actually bet it that way. Now, this particular time, because there was so much negative movement on the stock prior to the earnings call, I thought that we might get a bounce, but I didn't take into consideration that Elon would not give guidance, and that's what everybody's talking about this morning. All right, let's move on to this next story. We got Sawyer Merritt again. He says, regarding Dojo being a long shot bet, well, it turns out that Elon Musk on the Tesla earnings call 1 year ago said, quote, I look at Dojo as a long shot bet, but if it's a long shot bet that pays off, it will pay off very, very big way. It's a bet worth making, but not one you can take to the bank sort of thing. You know how Elon is. Sometimes he gets these memes in his head and he just repeats them and repeats them. So there you are. He's almost word for word repeating this a year later. In the meantime, Sawyer Merritt doesn't note that he did say that if it does work out and if there's an opportunity to do something with it in a kind of Amazon services kind of way, it might be worth $400 billion in profits. So, I mean, other than that. So then we got Gene Munster this morning. He says, one of my 2024 predictions was this Tesla would not announce a next gen cheaper model. He says, it looks like I'm going to be wrong. While the company stopped short of announcing a product, yesterday's call effectively introduced the first sub $30,000 Tesla vehicle. He says, I missed this because I believed if Tesla announced an upcoming new, cheaper model, the Osborne effect would kick in and demand for Model 3 would slow this year, making it for a difficult 2024 meaningfully more challenging. Bottom line, Tesla is likely to announce a new vehicle later this year, and it will slow sales. It looks like revised consensus for 2024 revenue growth is gravitating to 13%. What did I say this morning? I think I said 14%. That's on automotive. I think the rest of everything else will increase it to 20% or more, as we'll talk about later in this analysis. My sense is the year will end up 10%. So that's way off of what I'm going to be talking about. But, I am the optimist. For 2025, I believe that the first half of the year will grow around 10%, accelerating to 30% in the back half of the year when the new vehicle production begins, but ending the year with a blended 20% growth. He can't be taking into consideration Cybertruck. He can't be taking into consideration semi-truck. He can't be taking into consideration. Anyway. So Gene believes that sales of 3 and Y will contract. or else he doesn't believe that Cybertruck will be at least 250,000 in 2025. Because that would be a 10% increase all by itself. Anyway, so I really don't know. I don't think that the Gen 3 vehicle is going to be a meaningful cannibalizer of Model 3 sales. You are a Model 3 type person. You're not going to spend, there are people that are not, okay. There are people that are not going to spend $50,000 on a car, and there are people that are not going to spend $25,000 on a car. They want to spend $50,000 on a car. So I don't think the Gen 3 vehicle is going to have all the creature comforts and all the looks and all of the size and everything that people that typically buy a luxury car are a sub-luxury, in that $30,000 to $50,000 range, which would be me. They're not going to be interested in the new Gen 3 vehicle. Colin Langan, you know him. He's the Wells Fargo equity analysis. Completely gets it wrong this morning on CNBC. He was talking about the miss. He calls it a miss on margins and how the in the call, they talked about not being able to get the margins down or get the cost of goods down much more. This was completely and completely misunderstood. How can he be this? I won't say it out loud. What was said is that the natural cost of goods reduction based on ramping the product up is reaching some limits, and therefore continued reductions due to those natural kinds of lowered cost of goods are running out. But they specifically stated that they still have raw material opportunities where we're going to see reductions in cost of goods. They still have specific battery. We know batteries are dropping like crazy. That's going to definitely impact. And they talked about cost savings approaches having to do with just the design elements. And then model level changes. I mean, there's so many things where cost of goods can come down. So I'm shooting for, I said this morning, I'm shooting for a 5% cost of good reduction this year. I think that's going to be a no-brainer. Now, it was 9% last year, so 5% would be much less. Just breaking, new home sales came in at an annualized rate of 664,000, which was way over Wall Street's guesstimate of 649. The jump was 8% over last month. Now, that's a long way to go to get back to the peak rate in 2020 of 1 million a year, but it's a big increase, which we've been talking about for 2 months now on this channel. The housing market is going to, if the overall GDP is going to be in trouble next year, which we'll talk about that in a minute, housing would be the savior this year. The housing market is going to go just fine. Median sales prices fell to 413 from 426. Of course, this can be all about the mix. You know, you don't sell a new house in Detroit for the same price that you sell it for in West Los Angeles. So obviously, of course, mortgage interest rates dropping into the sixes was a big factor, and that's helping sales in what is usually a time of year, December, which there's not a lot of new home sales being, not a lot of new homes being sold, not a lot of any kind of homes being sold typically in December, January, and February. Okay, now we'll move on to the 10 great news items from the call. After letting you know that tonight, oh, sorry, this is Randy Kirk. Did you know that? Please hit like, subscribe, notify. You want to hit notify because tonight I've got Bradford Ferguson. He'll be helping me with the good news, all the good news, and we'll be talking about what's happened the rest of the day, and it should be a phenomenal show because we'll have so much to talk about. I guess I'll have to cut it off at an hour because we could probably go 2. Anyway, and then Larry will be back tomorrow night. That show should be, I mean, last night's was such a huge success. If you didn't look at last night's, I'm going to leave a card for that below down in a little while. And then in the morning, we're going to look at the PCE results. Now, since the GDP came out the day before the PCE results, we already know that the PCE will be fantastic. So the market is already building that in. We're already seeing the interest rates, the treasuries yields have gone down, although they now have bounced off of that low that low for the day. I'm kind of surprised. I think they should really be back down under 4 again based on the PCE tomorrow. Anyway, it's going to come in under 2% for the core, it looks like. And it just makes me wonder why the Fed will not be cutting 25 basis points next week. It just seems like that would be the smart thing to do, is to recognize that we have hit 2% and that we're going lower than 2%, which they said they didn't want to do. All right. Anyway, buy your Cybertruck. You know, you want to buy your Cybertruck bottle opener. If you haven't bought one already, you need this and you need a bunch of them. You should probably buy 5 right now, $20 a piece. It's a $100 bill. Buy 5 of them, put them on the shelf. You know, you've always got these situations coming up where you could use something like that as a gift in a situation. There's all kinds of folks in your life that would think this would be a lot of fun. And as the Cybertruck gets bigger and bigger and bigger this year, you could easily find situations where people will be like all excited about the Cybertruck, and you go, you know what? I got this thing. I'd love to give you one of these. Anyway, they're $20 a piece right now. It doesn't matter how many you buy. And they're still $29.95 on Amazon. That's my site. I sell them all day long. Every single day I'm getting orders at $29.95. All right. Patreon. Please join Patreon. All right. Number 6. Why is it number 6? Because this morning I gave you the first 5. If you want to see the first 5, you got to go back to this morning show, which you should do. I'll put a card for that later, as well as the Larry from last night. I'll put cards for both of those later in the show. All right, number 6, semi-truck groundbreaking confirmed. Now, we heard last week that they had the groundbreaking and everything, but now it's really confirmed. It was made clear. I'm going to take the unders on this one. When I say the unders, I'm going to assume only 100,000 semis in 2025. Now, yeah, when I say that, it's 100,000 run rate sometime in 2025. I'm not saying they'll actually ship out 100,000 in 2025, but sometime in 2025, they'll get to the 100,000 run rate. And then in 2026, they'll make 100,000, and maybe they'll go up beyond that. But for now, I'm not going to go with my number of 1 million. I'm not going to go with Brian's number of 4 million or 3 million, because, that would be the worldwide requirement for semis, and it's going to take a while to ramp that much. And I'm sure Tesla wants to take this one step at a time. But 100,000 semis in 2025, roughly equivalent to 1 million Gen 3 vehicles in revenue and profit. Where is Gene Munster on this? Where is any of these guys? Why aren't they talking about this? If they make 100,000 of these, it's the equivalent of 1 million Gen 3 vehicles. Every analyst I've seen on the semi says it'll revolutionize trucking. Pepsi put out a video yesterday saying their trucks are getting up to 500 miles per charge. They're going to sell 100,000 of these a year. And everybody's all excited about the Gen 3. This is going to be, at 100,000, the equivalent of 1 million of those. All right, number 7, we have confirmation that Lathrop will fully ramp this year. This will eventually, meaning because of bookkeeping, but the reality is it's going to add 20 billion a year of revenue to current levels and 5 billion in profits. Well, when the profit in 2023 was a total of under 11 billion, and you're looking to add 5 billion from energy storage alone, this is not in any of the major analyst numbers for 2024, not even Gary Black. And this does not include any profits from the new Shanghai Megapack production. So somewhere in 2024, we're going to hit this run rate of 10,000 units per year at $2 million average each. And that doesn't even count the power walls that are in the same category. Power walls will add to that. So that's why I'm saying it's going to be about 5 billion in profits. We'll be at a run rate of 5 billion. We'll be in the fourth quarter, we will almost certainly look at $1.25 billion in profit just for energy storage. Nobody's got this in their numbers. So when people talk about the stock and where we're going to be and how the revenues are not going to be increasing as fast, they're not looking at these numbers. And this is not like, oh, maybe this will happen, or gee whiz, it's not a product yet or something. No, this is a product. It was confirmed that they're going to get it up to 10,000 units a year. Anyway, number 8, in the slide deck, there was finally a mention of the IRA, what was it called? Inflation Reduction Act, contributing to lowering the costs of goods sold. We have also, in the earnings call, we had confirmation that the 4680, that right now 25% of the 100 gigawatt hours is fully switched to the new form factor and is ahead of the Cybertruck needs and will eventually supply Model Y too. They're building inventory so they can switch over to where they're doing the Cybertruck and the Model Y. So 25% is now running and ramping. I'm sorry, the next 25% is now running. So we got 4 lines. Line 1, fully switched over. Line 2, beginning to ramp. Line 3 and 4, being commissioned. So by mid-year, this is what they told us before, they seem to be confirming that they're on that path. They should be fully ramped. So let's be really conservative in 2024 and say we only build 50 gigawatts actually produced in Austin. Not 100 gigawatts, half, okay? That at the end of the year, we're running at the 100 gigawatt rate, but that because we're only doing 25 now, at the 25 rate now, and we'll be at the 50 rate later, then we'll be at the 75, and then we'll be at the 100, that we only build a total of 50 gigawatt hours in Austin this year. That is $2.25 billion in direct subsidies dropping to the bottom line and appearing in cost of goods. This is not anything to do with all the benefits I talked about earlier in terms of, raw material costs coming down or battery costs coming down or changes in the designs and changes in the way they build things. All of those, I think, will contribute around 5%. Maybe it's only 4%, whatever. But this is in addition. This is 2.25 that comes from the U.S. government and just bunk drops to the bottom line. Now, when you compare that to overall profits this year of 11 billion, nobody has this in their numbers. Now you add that to the 5 billion ahead above. Now you got 2.5 or 2.25 and 11. It's starting to really turn into real money. And nobody's talking about this. Okay, number 9, confirmation of at least 2.35 million production capacity. Okay, not 2.35. They didn't give us any knowledge. This is the big argument, the big thing that everybody's all upset about this morning in terms of the call, that they didn't give any kind of model for the year. They didn't give us any kind of guidance with regard to how many cars they're going to ship this year. But they did tell us in the stack, they have 2.35 million production capacity. That's as of today. And it's always lower than reality. For instance, the Model Y in Austin was shown as 250,000. Well, it's 500,000. Now, they might not have started the second line yet. They may not be doing 3 shifts or 4 shifts, but they're showing that it's only 250,000. We know it's at least 5. Shanghai was shown as 950,000. They're already running well above that number on a month-to-month basis. So that tells me that the 235 should be in the bank for 2024. Larry Goldberg is doing some analysis right now on that. I'm sure he'll be reporting on that tomorrow night, that whatever the capacity is in the beginning year is pretty darn close to whatever the actual shipments are for the year. Well, if we hit 2.35, that would be a massive beat compared to Wall Street estimates. Number 10, the free cash flow was really solid at over 2 billion. And that was the best for all of 2023 by double. And this was on top of another 2 billion that was spent in CapEx, which was also near the high for the year, just a little bit under the third quarter. So this is huge. I gave you the other day, I talked about somebody that did an analysis of Tesla's value just based on free cash flow. And this is a huge beat, which would make his number should have been higher. If we can keep throwing off $2 billion a quarter, that'd be another 8 billion next year. Well, of course, that means number 11, that there's $30 billion in the bank. And by the end of next year, we might be looking at 38 or $40 billion in the bank and basically no debt. Do you know, this is a fact, I just saw it yesterday, there is no tech company that has a better balance sheet when you compare net cash to market cap, not any other company. All right. So I don't know. Yeah, the stock's down today. Short-sighted thinkers, I'm sorry. Anyway, number 12, operating expenses are almost surreal. Jeff Lutz has mentioned this. Larry Goldberg has mentioned this. It's incredible that they're keeping their operating expenses so low. It's about 9% of revenues. This indicates what? You tell me. An extremely well-run business. Everybody knows it's well run. I wrote a book on Elon Musk's management capabilities, the Elon Musk method. If you haven't read it, how come? It's really still that 100% of everything I said in that book 3 years ago is still true. This is an indication, this is an addition. This is an addition to their cash position, which is a proof of how well they're run, and their proven track record on allocation of capital. They are the best at allocating capital. Maybe Apple's better, but I don't know. It doesn't look like it. They have their ROIC, return on invested capital, is second to Apple and probably going to pass Apple if it hasn't already. These things alone should make the company the darling of Wall Street. Why is it down this morning? Okay, number 13. Services are now turning to profit from a loss. This line should continue to increase according to the call. So where we had $500,000 in profits, maybe next year it's $1 million, maybe it's $1.5 million. adding another 500,000 or a million to what we talked about above. Did I say million? I mean billion, 500 million to a billion. I'm sorry, I completely blew that. So now we're almost equaling the 11 billion. We're between all the things I've already talked about, we're almost equaling the 11 billion in profits from this year, therefore doubling profits in 1 year. Yeah. Oh, by the way, you know those IRA benefits I talked about above? Well, it's not just the batteries that we make in Austin. We're getting some benefit from the ones that Panasonic's making, and we're getting some benefit from putting a lot of the batteries that we're buying, we're putting them into packs, and we get 10 bucks per kilowatt hour for those. So there's more numbers in addition. Oh, I think there's also some benefits coming out of the plant that we're making down in South Texas, down in Corpus Christi. I think we get some IRA benefit or some one of the bills. I think we get some benefit from that, maybe even a 30%. Lots and lots of stuff that nobody's talking about. Number 14, Elon said exactly what we needed him to say about the compensation issue. And he's repeated again this morning on X. It is all about his voting rights, not about the economics. He specifically said it's not about the money, and that the voting rights is not about controlling. He's not interested in controlling, but he doesn't want to lose control to the institutional shareholder services like BlackRock, who vote for things like ESG and other stupid stuff. He worries that those kind of those institutional shareholder services who are voting on behalf of people like the California Teachers Union could vote in a very inappropriate ways when it comes to AI and AGI and that their impact on humans. And he wants to make sure he has a major choice in how that goes forward, a major impact. All right, number 15, good news on the advertising increasing and their understanding, their statement that they know, they get it. They have to educate the public that this is necessary. Good news was modified, unfortunately, with a statement by the CFO that we don't want to spend too much on this. What? Okay, there are probably more than these 15. Again, I gave you 5 this morning, and this is 10 more. I'll stop with these major obvious ones, most of which are pretty much certainties. Most of these are already in the bag. There's a few of them, like next year, the Model 3 coming out on time, or the semi-trucks starting to produce later this year or early next year. Those are not certainties, but they're now part of the stack, if you will, of the Tesla mission. All right. So I'm going to put a card up. The first card is going to be for Larry's talk last night. Larry's co-hosting last night on Good News Wednesday. It was a fantastic show, unbelievably good. There's the card for that. And then I'm also going to put another card up. That'll be for this morning's show, which is getting massive numbers of viewing right now, as I gave you the first 5, in addition to other commentary with regard to where the business, where the economy and what's happening this morning. A big deal with the GDP with a major beat. So that card as well. Please like, subscribe, notify, buy the Cybertruck opener, join Patreon, all down in the description below. It's been great talking to you.